Welcome to Unplugged Live with Dr. Diane Smith-Clark, PhD. Get ready to get inspired by the stories of overcoming life's challenges to bring change and transformation. Here's Dr. Diane.
Hello and welcome back to Unplugged. We're so delighted that you joined us on tonight. Tonight we have a very interesting broadcast that's going to bring awareness, insight, and information to you. You may be one of those persons who are under tremendous stress, who are suffering with PTSD from traumas in your life, and really needing some counseling and therapy. And this show was designed to help you move through any stigmas that there's something wrong with you, that you're crazy, but for you to know that to be wealthy, you have to be mentally healthy. So it's important that we engage the services of professionals to help us many times walk through traumatic crisis, walk through situations to get going with our lives. So today I have a guest from Greenville, South Carolina. His name is Eric Pfluger, and he's going to bring us some information to bless our minds and our spirits. Listen, I want you to like, share this broadcast. Find us on YouTube. You can find us on all social media outlets. We welcome your comments. We welcome your questions and your suggestions. Just hit us up at DianeUnplugged.com. Thank you so much. And here is our guest. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Dr. Clark.
How's your day going so far? Busy morning, huh?
It's going busy. It's been a great day.
Awesome. Well, listen, I wanted to inform our audience tonight. I really want to talk about some PTSD and maybe a little bipolar issues that people are experiencing, especially in the community of the church. A lot of people in church feel like because they pray, and they have faith that they're going to be all right. But oftentimes without the input of a professional, you're not able to really walk through successfully to a healthy place or a healthy space. So I want you to just take some time and introduce yourself, your business, where you're from, and then we can dive into talking about those services.
Well, I appreciate you having me. So my name's Eric Pfluger. Like you said, I'm based out of the Greenville area in South Carolina. I'm a licensed professional counselor, a licensed addiction counselor. I'm also a licensed professional counselor supervisor, and so I help young counselors on the pathway for clinical licensure in the state of South Carolina. I'm also a Christian, and I love a sign on one of our local churches posted. It's been a couple of years now. It's not still up, but it said, "God created therapists. Go see one."
I like that because he did. He himself is noted for being a wonderful counselor.
Amen.
Exactly. It's so he created after his own kind persons in the earth who would be skilled and equipped to help us through some of the pressures from trauma, crisis, not to mention the economic climate now among us is really something. And now it's filtrating the educational system. I know here in Florida, I don't know that much about your area, but it's nothing like when we went to school with reading, writing, and arithmetic. Everything's so advanced, and our children many times finding it challenging to really move through society in a healthy way because they have low academic acumen.
Yeah, it's very challenging. Part of my normal work day, I do spend time in one of our local high schools and supervising some schools, providing direct services to high school age students. So I do on a daily basis see the complexity of the struggles right now. But school systems in our area are doing a pretty admirable job pouring resources into mental health care. They've the use of some technology to provide some other support and learning, hiring specialized people to lead social emotional learning groups and things of that nature. It's been neat to see.
That's awesome. In working with the children, what do you find are some of their distresses, some of their stresses that they're dealing with? You said high school, especially that age, because they're
Mhm.
moving toward adulthood.
Yeah, yeah, especially that age, and where they have fresh in their mind um, the traumatic time that started early in 2020. Um, some of my rising freshmen who struggle to transition between grades, elementary to middle and now middle to high school because those disruptions were so great. It's really impacted their resiliency in a way that's very obvious to a lot of us professionals and probably to a lot of parents and administrators. Um, it's hard.
So as you intermingle with them, how free are the students to talk with you? Or is it challenging for them to open up to you, or oh, it is challenging?
It can be. A lot of it depends on the individual. Um, I think we have a culture of minimizing traumatic experiences, and it tends to come kind of with the nature of trauma. Our brain, in order to help us feel safe, shrinks the impact of dangers that we've experienced, and it doesn't have to be acute circumstances like going to war or experiencing some other scary event like that. But trauma can be a result of chronic stress.
Mhm.
I myself, working in some very stressful facilities, I worked with our law enforcement partners for several years at our county jail, and so I myself, being a practitioner of mental health, I also participate in my own mental health services because I know that it's good for me. But because we're still struggling to have these conversations like the one we're having today, um, the the high school age students, they don't have, on the most basic level, lack the language at times. And how do you speak to uh, the scariness of trauma when you even lack the basic words? So that's typically where we start.
I found that in engaging the services of a counselor, there are times you do not have the language to express. You can tell them the event, but
Yeah,
many times you feel alienated from the feelings that were suppressed in the midst of the event. So when you're trying to say, I'm dealing with, sometimes you go to the counselor and say, I'm dealing with blank. This happened and now I'm here. Can you help me?
it's it's so hard to feel normal again after experience, even if it was a months long trauma or years long trauma. It can be so hard to feel, like we're still incorporated as a functional member of society, or even just a semi-functional member of a semi-functional family.
Hmm.
It can be very hard.
Yeah, it's been an uptick in in the face of drugs being a substitute for
Mhm.
emotional trauma and distress. And it's gotten so critical now
Yeah,
that not just young people are experimenting with drugs. We have senior citizens, many of them who are hooked on
yeah,
prescription medication
yeah.
What are some of the factors? What happens in post-traumatic stress syndrome? We know the initials of it, and
Mm-hmm.
pretty much we have associated it with war because there's killing and blood and so forth. But
Sure.
there are some traumatic situations that occur in for instance, shifting your job from working in an office every day to having to come home and work on a screen,
Yeah.
or going through a divorce at a
Mm-hmm.
time when two incomes are needed and now there's only going to be one,
Yeah.
and the fight that it takes to get ample support, because most people don't live in the bracket that they're providing alimony.
Yeah.
You just end
Yeah.
up with what they call child support. So how
Sure.
does PTSD play a role in that? What does that look like?
It's first and foremost is trauma can be the most serious and horrific things that we experience in life, or it can be simple and small things. It can be simple and small things over a really long time that can be traumatic. It's unhelpful and, dare I say, unfair if we are labeling all of the variance in trauma to say that something is more traumatic than others. It's a very personal topic, and so part of what I do to help people is to explore how trauma has impacted their daily functionality, and then give them the words to start to speak about what may or may not have been traumatic. Oftentimes, trauma has affected us, and we don't even realize it. We just realize or start to notice that something's changed. Um, when what's happened is our brain has lost a sense of safety. Now, for really serious and scary things, violent things, and horrific things that happen, certainly that's going to be traumatic to just about anybody. But for most people living life that haven't seen war, that haven't seen murder and things like that, simple things can be traumatic because some of us might be predisposed to experience trauma. We inherit that resilience from our parents and our grandparents, and so families, especially my friends in communities of color, who may have experienced generational trauma, that resilience can be impacted, and and so we have to dig in on a one-to-one basis to try to help individuals identify what was that experience, and to give them the courage and the support, uh, and the feeling of safety that they can start to kind of unravel, untangle some of those memories and unlock those hurts.
That's very true. And especially on the face of the climate in our country right now, you almost have to tell yourself you're okay, you're safe,
Yeah.
it's okay for you too. And oftentimes in the midst of that, you can become emotionally overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
uh, mentally stressed out from trying to piece things together or hold things together. And sometimes you can have things together and have traumatic experiences emotionally. How does one cope with that?
I, I, my process is starting with helping the individual recognize what is working for them. Our body, in a divine and miraculous way, has the ability to heal daily, to help us function daily, and yet sometimes it's so natural and nuanced and even subconscious that we overlook how well we might be doing on a daily basis. Now that also can be a stumbling block, in ways where we feel like we've got it all together, and yet in ways where we're falling short. So I help the individual, through exploration, develop that skills-based coping. Coping skills is not saying it wrong by any means. Professionally, I try to first identify and expand a client's natural tendency to cope with difficult things. I don't seek to try to help someone reinvent the wheel,
Mhm.
but to help them do some small and basic things, maybe with just a slightly different intent, or just with a little bit of support and encouragement.
That's so very important because a lot of times we deal with our circles and our corners, people we have in those arenas, and we try to receive from them some level of comfort and insight, information. And a lot of times, people in your corner, in your circle, are having difficulty themselves.
Yeah.
So it's really not always safe to take the advice of unskilled or non-professional people.
Yeah.
Thank God that we have our spiritual leaders, our Christian leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times our pastors are not skilled in counseling. If you go to seminary or you go to Bible college, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have some training in maybe
Sure.
crisis counseling, but it's not as extensive as if you were making this a career and you were going to really
Yeah.
work to serve people in moving them from negative and harmful places
Yeah.
in their lives to a an ability to deal with the reality of
Mm-hmm.
things without being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So the because of a lot of traumatic situations, you can have a surgery that
Mm-hmm.
becomes a trauma to you. Something that's
Absolutely.
simple. You
Yeah.
can lose, like in Florida now, we're having an uptick of companies not providing homeowners insurance.
Yeah.
That can produce a tremendous stress and
Yeah.
fear because your property needs to be insured. And we're
Sure.
living in a state that has hurricanes, um,
I,
intermittent weather, so many things to damage and depreciate our properties.
mm,
There are people dealing with the stress of that. And if they came to you, Eric, how would you help them? How would you help them navigate through that?
sometimes, um, depending on the person, sometimes it can be easy to overlook how um, insurance can exacerbate other ways that individuals might have previously felt vulnerable and now feel vulnerable or unsafe in a new and different way. And it's natural to compartmentalize these things, right? Like the loss of homeowners insurance
Mhm.
and certainly feeling like, well, that's not a pandemic. That's not right. Like that's not COVID. But oftentimes our brain on the lowest levels of thinking, kind of that midbrain, lower brain part, that deals most in our emotions, uh, it it oftentimes doesn't distinguish when I'm feeling unsafe, whether it's a dog or a hurricane. It just feels unsafe, and so we get tripped up with these realities of life, and so we sometimes we minimize,
Mhm.
sometimes we don't know where to start,
Mhm.
um, and it breaks my heart where there's barriers for people accessing help, to sometimes have to make a financial choice between,
Yes.
paying uh, an insurance premium or paying a counselor,
Mm.
to feel that my property and my home is safe on one level, on another level to work on feeling psychologically safe.
Mhm.
Those are awful, awful choices to have to make. My heart goes out to anyone in that situation.
Oh, well, it's a big problem here in Florida. We actually have one company that's going to move out of Florida.
Mm,
But I was looking on the face and the scope of things with the different weather patterns and the calamities
Mm-hmm.
that are happening around the nation, all of them involves insurance. And I was speaking to my group about that, to make sure that they insure against losses, because the industry is going to be hit, and I don't know how they're going to recoup or
Yeah.
recover. I mean, you have fires in one segment, you have flooding in another segment, then you have bad weather, and then you have tornadoes,
Mm-hmm.
and destroying whole towns now, just wiping them out
Yeah.
and losing loved ones. All of this is creating a climate of feeling unsafe because it's so
Yeah.
unpredictable. The weatherman tries to give you a short view of, okay, we're going to have this weather, you're going to have that,
Mm,
but things have been happening so frequently in diverse places that it is putting a tremendous pressure on insurance, because people are relying on their insurance to help them get back to some normalcy in
mm,
life. And that many times requires
yeah.
the undergirding of a counselor or psychologist, someone to help
Mm-hmm.
you manage stability in
Yeah.
your thinking before you can even approach normalcy with your lifestyle.
Insurance makes doing our jobs hard sometimes, and without a doubt, there needs to be some changes happening. The fragmentation of our, especially in the medical field, where the largest companies carve out these mental health benefits, or that basic plans don't cover mental health benefits. And I think there's been some progress there, but um, just in my opinion, not enough. It's perpetuated a fragmentation of our whole mental health system. Recently I was part of a school sponsored panel for students and families, with the sole goal and purpose of helping families navigate mental health systems, because they are so fragmented that that addiction treatment is different than mental health treatment. That a psychotherapist is different than a counselor, and that a coach is different than the other two.
Mhm.
That a psychiatrist and a psychologist have a different job. People who are counselors, like you mentioned, with a divinity background or a theological background, different than a clinically trained or secular professional. And so without conversations to educate people on how to access services, most people are still lost without an idea on where to start and what they really need.
Mhm. I believe there's still not enough information getting out about the
Yeah.
need for mental health professionals. I really do, because even the professionals need another professional, um,
Yeah.
yeah, servicing them
Mm-hmm.
because of the inundation with information and thinking through situations, applying
Yeah.
certain processes. And you mentioned addiction. I want to hit that before we go. Also,
Mm-hmm.
um, there are people that I know. I
Mm-hmm.
coach. I coach. I don't counsel. I coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I found out in coaching, there is some counseling involved when you hit those
Mm-hmm.
bumps and humps in the process. And a lot of people are addicted to
Mm-hmm.
medicine, but they don't realize it. How
Yeah.
how do you first recognize an addiction, and when do you know you need to go get help?
It's going to be different for most people, and it's I think the first thing to do is to consult someone that you really trust. But you're looking for patterns. You're looking for patterns where somebody is using a substance, or it can even be a
Mhm.
behavior or a habit. People get addicted to all different things. one of my favorite books on addiction is called The Craving Mind, by Dr. Judd. I hope I remembered that right. But in that book, he talks about being addicted to love, being addicted to thinking, you know, and then all your classic substance addictions. But where you see the use of a substance or a behavior, or something that is difficult to stop and having worse consequences on somebody's daily functioning, I think at the end of the day, in understanding addiction, you have to almost just look at the 9 to 5 of living, you know, because these words and these labels are meaningful. You know, participants in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, they hold on to that label of addict, where others might, you know, with many years of sobriety, not consider themselves addict anymore. So someone who's questioning whether they're addicted or not, you know, needs to talk to a trusted friend or a trusted family member who can have even just the slightest bit of objectivity about that person's life and just have an open and honest conversation. The point being, whether someone's addicted or not is typically not the most pressing question. The question really is, are you willing to just better your life?
Okay.
Are you willing just to help yourself? You know, we can figure out the other stuff, you know, in later sessions or conversations, however the individual decides to go about it. But yeah, those things matter much less compared to someone's deeper motivation on living a more healthy and functional life.
That is so important, because after a while, you start having feelings of guilt and shame. And of course, those emotions cause you to hide.
They do.
And we have people who are functioning addicts, and some of it's to prescription drugs. And they say, well, I had a prescription, but the prescription was supposed to take care of a course of situations. And then at some point, you're able to be maintained without it. But I mean, and you say, well, I don't take narcotics, but you're hooked on Aleve, Advil, Tylenol. You know, every day you have to have it, because there's some pain, some ailment that's going on in your body that your mind has not effectively addressed. I know I like to read books, and I read a lot of faith books with a lot of faith leaders. And what they teach you to do is strengthen your mind to think, because your mind controls your body.
Yeah.
So when I found that a lot of pains that seemed to be from some physical ailment were pains from something external happening in my life that was affecting me emotionally, and then it translated to a pain. And you really need a professional to help you move through that, because I didn't realize that's what it was. I have pain. You go to the doctor, they say, we don't see anything. And in some cases, a month later, the person is dead. But they went to see, you know, if something was wrong. But your mind, as they say, is a terrible thing to waste.
Absolutely.
And counseling is a healthy way to educate your mind and help you move through thought processes that brings you to a picture of wholeness. Eric, tell the I said congregation. You can tell I'm used to being in front of a congregation. But tell the audience how they can reach you, because you do online counseling.
I do some online counseling in the state of South Carolina. So unfortunately, I'm not licensed in Florida, but I'm happy to help. navigate anyone that needs help navigating their, to find a local provider. Psychologytoday.com, searching my name, Eric M. Flukiger, is a great way to find me. I have an email listed there. I have a phone number listed there. Oftentimes I am in session seeing clients. So anybody that has a question or it's a great way to reach me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight. It was
a
pleasure seeing you, seeing the person I've been communicating with. I appreciate your time, and I pray God's blessings on your business, that God will really expose you to persons who really need you, and that you have the supply to give them when they come to you. So thank you again so much. You've shared a lot of information, and I believe that the listening audience has been blessed by your presence. So thank you.
Thank you. Keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you. I think I will. I've got this much mind healthy. I'm working on this side. No, seriously, it takes work, believe it or not, to keep your mind in a good place. Yeah,
good.
It takes work.
I love to hear it.
So thank you, our listening and viewing audience. We thank you so much for tuning in to Unplug on tonight. Stay tuned. We'll be back next Thursday night at 7:00 p.m. And we're going to have, of course, some information for you that is going to bless your life. Remember that our purpose here is to help people improve the quality of their lives. I'm Dr. Diane Clark, and I am empowering the harvest.
Thanks for joining us for Unplugged Live with Dr. Diane Smith-Clark, PhD, helping to bring change and transformation in the mental health space within the church community. Dr. Diane wants to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, guest recommendations, or program topic ideas, visit DianeUnplugged.com and click the Contact Us link. Dr. Diane also appreciates your prayers and your financial support. You can give online at DianeUnplugged.com and select Donate. If your business or ministry organization is interested in sponsoring this program, you can go to DianeUnplugged.com and click the Contact Us link. Unplugged Live is on all the social media platforms. Just search Dr. Diane Smith-Clark, follow, and subscribe. Unplugged Live with Dr. Diane Smith-Clark, PhD. Healthy mind, wealthy life.